The great hall of the Eternal Accord Station was filled with light and noise. Hundreds of delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the 400th annual summit of the Galactic Council. Ships of every shape and size floated outside the massive windows, their hulls reflecting the distant stars. Ambassador Yuna walked through the entrance with her delegation close behind her. Fleet Admiral Tay stood on her right side, his uniform pressed and clean. Chief Engineer Mina followed on her left, carrying a small bag with nothing but a single data crystal inside. Behind them came 47 other humans, all silent, all walking with purpose. The other species barely noticed them arrive. The insectoid Vilix were busy clicking and buzzing among themselves, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber lights. The gaseous Marai floated in their containment spheres, their misty forms swirling with colors that showed their moods. The reptilian Druins sat in their massive chairs, their scaled tails wrapped around the legs of their seats. Yuna took her place at the human table. It was smaller than the others. It sat in the back corner of the hall, far from the central platform where important decisions were made. This had always been their place. For 50 years, since humanity first joined the Council, they had sat in this corner. She remembered the day humans first came to this station. They had arrived with hope in their hearts and gifts in their hands. They brought technology they had developed, medicines they had created, and ideas they wanted to share. The Council had accepted all of it. They took the human star charts that mapped safe passages through dangerous space. They took the translation devices that allowed different species to understand each other. They took the agricultural techniques that could feed billions. But they never gave anything in return. Not respect. Not gratitude. Not even a seat at the main table. The Velix High Speaker rose from his platform. His name was too complex for human tongues. A series of clicks and whistles that meant something like, "He who speaks with authority." He was old. His exoskeleton cracked in places, but his voice was still strong. "Another year begins," he announced. "Another summit where we guide the future of all civilized species." Yuna noticed he did not say all species. He said civilized species. She had heard this distinction many times before. The Vilix considered themselves the most civilized. The Marai believed their ancient wisdom made them superior. The Druin thought their military strength earned them the highest place. And humans? Humans were useful. That was all. Admiral Tay leaned close to Yuna. "They still do not see us," he whispered. "They never have," she replied. The summit continued for 3 days. Trade agreements were discussed. Border disputes were argued. Resource allocations were debated. Through all of it, the human delegation sat in silence. They did not speak. They did not vote. They did not negotiate. On the second day, a young Druin counselor named Jin noticed the strange behavior. He was new to the council, appointed only a year ago. He had studied human culture during his training and found them fascinating. Unlike his elders, he believed humans deserved more respect. "Ambassador Yuna seems troubled," he said to his superior. The older Druin laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "The humans are always troubled. They want more than they deserve. Ignore them. They will speak when they need something from us." Jin was not so sure. He watched Yuna's face throughout the day. She showed no emotion. Her eyes were steady and calm. But there was something in them he recognized. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was the look of someone who had finally made a decision they could not take back. On the third day, the Vilix High Speaker made a joke at humanity's expense. He mentioned how humans had once begged for membership in the Council. They had promised to serve the greater good of galactic civilization. The Marai delegates laughed, their forms turning bright with amusement. The Druin chuckled. Even some of the minor species joined in. The human table remained silent. "Perhaps our human friends have lost their voices," the High Speaker said. "They certainly have nothing important to say." Yuna stood. The laughter slowly died as every eye in the chamber turned to her. She was a small woman, her hair gray with age, her face lined with years of patience and pain. But in that moment, she seemed taller than anyone in the room. She walked to the central platform. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Admiral Tay and Engineer Mina followed her. The rest of the human delegation rose from their seats. Yuna placed the data crystal on the great table, where the council leaders sat. It was a tiny thing, no larger than her thumb. She did not explain what it contained. She did not make a speech. She did not accuse anyone of anything. She simply turned and walked toward the exit. The other humans followed. 47 people walked out of the chamber in perfect order. Their backs were straight. Their heads were high. Not one of them looked back. The high speaker tried to call after them. "Ambassador, what is the meaning of this? You cannot simply leave during an active summit." Yuna did not respond. The doors closed behind her. Within the hour, every human ship in council space received the same signal. It was a simple command, just a few words in code that meant "come home." Cargo vessels abandoned their delivery routes. Medical ships left the stations they were supplying. Research teams packed their equipment and departed from alien worlds. The Marai envoy Hain, who had served on a joint exploration mission for 20 years, said goodbye to his colleagues without explanation. They asked him why he was leaving, what had happened, what the humans wanted. "Nothing," he said softly. "We want nothing from you anymore." By the next morning, there was not a single human left in council space. Their ships had jumped to faster than light speed, heading back toward the Sol system. The stations they had built stood empty. The networks they had maintained went quiet. The seats they had occupied gathered dust. The Galactic Council did not panic. They did not worry. They assumed this was a negotiation tactic, a dramatic gesture meant to demand better treatment. "They will return," the High Speaker declared. "They need us more than we need them." Jin watched the empty human table from across the hall. He picked up the data crystal Yuna had left behind but could not open it. The encryption was beyond anything he had seen. In the silence of the Great Hall, a terrible feeling grew in his chest. He did not know what was coming, but he knew one thing for certain. The High Speaker was wrong. 6 months passed. Humans did not return. At first, the Galactic Council continued, as if nothing had changed. The Vilix High Speaker held meetings. The Amhari elders offered their ancient wisdom. The Druin generals watched their borders. Everything seemed normal. Then the first cracks appeared, on the border world of Keithfur. A Druin patrol ship crossed into territory that the Vilix claimed as their own. This had happened before, many times over the past 100 years. It was always a tense moment, but it never became dangerous. Someone would call for human mediators, and within days, Ambassador Yuna, or someone from her team would arrive to calm both sides down. The Druin commander waited for the call. The Vilix captain demanded action. Both sides expected humans to appear and solve the problem. No one came. The waiting turned to confusion. The confusion turned to anger. A Vilix soldier fired a warning shot. A Druin soldier fired back. Within an hour, 23 people were dead, and both governments were demanding justice. The council called an emergency session. The High Speaker looked around the Great Hall, expecting to see human diplomats ready to fix the situation. He saw only their empty table. "We must handle this ourselves," he declared. "We do not need the humans," but no one knew how. For 3 generations, humanity had managed every major dispute between species. They had developed methods for understanding both sides. They had created systems for fair negotiation. They had built trust with every faction through decades of patient work. That knowledge was gone now. It had walked out the door with Yuna and her delegation. Counselor Bon of the Mahai tried to mediate. He was considered wise among his people, a being of great age and experience. But when he spoke to the Druin, they saw him as weak. When he spoke to the Vilix, they saw him as slow. He did not know how to talk to either side. He had never needed to learn. The border skirmishes continued. More people died. On a Vilix cargo vessel far from the conflict, an engineer named Su worked on the navigation systems. Su was not human. He was Vilix, young and curious, one of the few of his kind who had chosen to learn human technology instead of just using it. The systems were failing. Star charts that had guided ships safely through asteroid fields were becoming corrupted. Routes that had been marked as dangerous were showing as safe. Routes that were safe showed as deadly. Su traced the problem to its source. The navigation database was not Velix technology, it was human. Every star chart in Council space, every safe passage, every mapped route had been created by human explorers and shared freely with the galaxy. The humans had not stolen this data when they left. They had simply stopped maintaining it, without their updates, without their corrections. The information was slowly becoming worthless. Sue reported his findings to the ship's captain. The captain did not want to believe him. "Impossible," she said. "We have had these charts for a century. We have used these charts for a century," Sue corrected, "but we never created them. We never maintained them. The humans did all of that. Now they are gone." The captain's compound eyes flickered with the first signs of fear. Similar discoveries were being made across Council space. The translation devices that allowed species to understand each other began to fail. The medical protocols that prevented diseases from spreading between species became outdated. The communication networks that connected distant worlds started to slow down and break. Everything that worked, everything that the Council had relied upon for generations, had human fingerprints on it. On the station Eternal Accord, Counselor Jin finally managed to decrypt the data crystal Yuna had left behind. He worked on it for months, learning human code structures, studying their encryption methods. When he finally opened it, he found only a single document. It was a list. 1,247 items long. Each item was a request that humanity had made to the Council over the past 50 years. Some were small, like asking for a larger meeting room or better food in the diplomatic cafeteria. Some were medium, like requesting voting rights on trade policies that affected human colonies. Some were large, like demanding recognition as equal partners in galactic governance. Next to each request was a single word: denied. Some requests had been denied politely. Some had been denied with laughter. Some had been denied with insults. But all of them had been denied. Jin read through the list slowly. His heart grew heavy with each item. He saw requests for respect that were treated as jokes. He saw requests for fairness that were ignored completely. He saw requests for basic dignity that were answered with contempt. At the bottom of the list was a final note written in Yuna's own words. "We asked, you refused. Gave everything, you took it. We stayed because we believed you would change. You did not. You have nothing left to give and nothing left to hope for. Goodbye." Jin brought the list to the Council. He demanded that everyone read it. The High Speaker refused at first, calling it human propaganda. But as the crises grew worse, as more systems failed and more conflicts erupted, he finally agreed to look. The reading took 3 hours. By the end, the Great Hall was silent. Even the High Speaker had no jokes to make. "We did this," Jin said. "We pushed them away, used them until they had nothing left, and now we are paying the price." An older Druid counselor shook his head. "They will return. They must return. They cannot survive without the resources of Council space." But Jin had studied humans. He knew something the others did not. Humans had survived ice ages on their homeworld. They had survived wars and plagues and disasters. They were perhaps the most adaptable species in the known galaxy. If anyone could survive alone, it was them. The Council voted to send a message to Earth. They wrote carefully, choosing their words with new respect. They asked humanity to return, to rejoin the great work of galactic civilization, to help fix the problems that were spreading through Council space. The message traveled across the stars. It reached the border of human space. There was no reply. 2 years after the humans left, the Druid Empire began to starve. It started slowly, as such things always do. A crop failure on one agricultural world. A shortage of grain on another. Reports of dying livestock on a third. The Druid authorities investigated each incident separately, looking for local causes. They found none. The truth was far worse than local problems. For the past 80 years, Druid agricultural worlds had depended on special crop strains developed by human scientists. These crops were resistant to a native blight that had once destroyed entire harvests. Human biotechnicians had visited Druid farms every year to maintain the genetic stock, to adapt the crops to changing conditions, to ensure the food supply remained strong. Those visits had stopped when the humans left. Without their expertise, the old blight was returning. Fields that had fed billions were now turning brown and dying. The Druin High Command tried to find solutions. They ordered their own scientists to study the crop strains. But Druin culture valued warriors over researchers. Their scientific community was small and underfunded. They had spent centuries relying on human knowledge instead of developing their own. "We cannot reverse engineer their work in time," the lead researcher reported. "We need at least 20 years to understand what they created. Our people will starve long before then." Across Council space, the Vilex Collective faced a different disaster. Their communication network collapsed completely in the middle of the night. Ships lost contact with their homeworlds. Colonies went silent. Military commanders could not reach their fleets. In the chaos, a Velix patrol squadron attacked a Druon supply convoy, mistaking it for an invasion force. The Druin responded with overwhelming power. 200 Velix soldiers died before anyone realized it was a mistake. The High Speaker demanded answers. His technicians worked around the clock to restore the network. After days of effort, they finally discovered the problem. The Velix had never built a long-range communication system. They had never needed to. When they first joined the Council, humans had offered to extend their own network to cover Velix space. It was a gift, given freely, connecting Velix worlds to each other and to the rest of the galaxy. The Velix had accepted this gift and then forgotten about it. They assumed it was simply part of how the universe worked. They never learned how to maintain it. They never even said thank you. When the humans left, they took their network with them. It did not crash immediately. The automated systems continued to function for months. But without human engineers to fix problems and update software, the network slowly failed. The Velix High Speaker stood before the Council and spoke words he had never imagined saying. "We are blind and deaf in our own space. We cannot talk to our own people. We never knew how dependent we were." The Meharai watched these disasters from their floating spheres, grateful that their own people had avoided the worst. But even they were not untouched. Their ancient archives, stored in crystal matrices that had lasted for thousands of years, were beginning to degrade. Human conservators had maintained these archives, using techniques no Mahai had ever learned. Envoy Hayan's former colleague, Mahai Elder, named Wu, decided to take action. He was young for an elder, barely 1,000 years old, and he remembered working alongside Hayan. The human had been kind to him, patient with his questions. Willing to explain things that other species took for granted, Wu assembled a small delegation and flew to the edge of human space. It was a long journey, dangerous now that the star charts were failing. 3 members of his crew died when their ship struck an asteroid that was supposed to be mapped. When they finally reached the border, they found human defense platforms waiting for them. The platforms were massive structures bristling with weapons. They hung in the darkness like sleeping giants. Wu broadcast a message on all frequencies. "I am Elder Wu of the Mirai Collective. I come in peace. I wish to speak with anyone who will listen." The platforms remained silent. Their weapons did not power up, but their shields were active. Wu waited for 3 days, sending the same message again and again. On the 4th day, a small human shuttle emerged from behind one of the platforms. It approached slowly, its pilot taking no chances. When it was close enough, a face appeared on Wu's communication screen. It was Hyun the envoy who had left 2 years ago. He looked older now, his hair grayer, his eyes tired. But there was no anger in his expression, only a deep, quiet sadness. "Elder Wu," he said, "I am surprised to see you here." "I came to ask for help," Wu replied. "Our archives are failing. Thousands of years of history will be lost." Hyun nodded slowly. "I remember those archives. I spent many happy hours studying them. They are beautiful. Can you help us save them?" There was a long silence. Wu watched Hyan's face, hoping to see a sign of agreement. Instead, he saw something he did not understand. Hyun looked like a man carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "I can provide you with the technical information you need," Hyun finally said. "It will be transferred to your ship before you leave. Everything is there. Instructions, tools, methods. Your people can learn to maintain the archives themselves. Wu felt a rush of relief. Thank you. Will you come with us? Will humans return to help in person? Hian shook his head. No, Elder Wu, we will not return. But why? The council needs you. We are falling apart without you, as Huan said softly. That is exactly why we left. Wu did not understand. His form swirled with confusion, colors shifting in his containment sphere. I do not follow your logic. Huan leaned forward, his eyes meeting Wu's across the void of space. For 50 years, we gave you everything. We solved your problems. We fixed your systems. We healed your wounds. And you never once saw us as equals. You saw us as servants, as tools. As the species that does the work so you do not have to. But we valued your contributions, Wu protested. You valued what we did, Huan corrected. You never valued who we were. There is a difference, Elder. A very great difference. The transmission ended. The technical data arrived as promised. Wu's ship turned and began the long journey home. Behind them, the human platforms returned to their silent watching. Wu thought about Han's words for the entire trip. By the time he reached Council space, he was beginning to understand what the humans had tried to tell them all along. It was not enough to need someone. You had to respect them too. 5 years after the withdrawal, a Velix research vessel crossed into human space without permission. Its name was Seeker of Truth, and its mission was desperate. A plague was spreading through the Velix collective. It started on a colony world near the galactic core and spread faster than anyone expected. The disease attacked the nervous system, causing paralysis and death within days. Medical teams worked around the clock, but nothing they tried made any difference. The Velix High Speaker, the same one who had mocked humans in the Great Hall 5 years ago, was dying. The plague had reached the home world. It was killing his people by the millions. Captain Ara commanded the Seeker of Truth. She was young for her rank, barely 30 cycles old. She had never met a human in person. Everything she knew about them came from old stories and historical records. But she knew one thing for certain. Human medicine was the most advanced in the galaxy. If anyone could cure the plague, it was them. Her ship jumped into human space and immediately triggered defense alarms. Within minutes, she was surrounded by human patrol vessels. They were fast and silent, moving with a precision that made her own crew look clumsy. A message appeared on her screen. Velix vessel. You've entered restricted space without authorization. State your purpose. Ara broadcast her reply with all the dignity she could manage. I am Captain Ara of the Velix Collective. My people are dying. We need your help. There was a long pause. Then a new voice came through the communication channel. It was calmer than the first, but carried an authority that made Ara straighten in her seat. This is Captain Hannah of the Earth Defense Perimeter. I am approaching your vessel. Do not power up any weapons. Ara ordered her crew to stand down. A human ship, smaller than the others, moved toward them. It came alongside and matched their speed. Through the viewport, Ara could see the human vessel's smooth hull, its efficient design, its quiet power. Captain Hannah's face appeared on the main screen. She was a woman of middle years, with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. She did not smile, but she did not scowl either. Her expression was neutral, patient, waiting. Tell me about this plague, Hannah said. Ara explained everything. She described the symptoms, the spread pattern, the failed treatments. She transmitted all the medical data her people had collected. When she finished, Hannah was silent for a moment, studying something on her own screen. We have seen this disease before, Hannah finally said. It appeared on one of our colony worlds 40 years ago. We developed a cure. I am transmitting the formula and treatment protocols to your ship now. Ara felt tears forming in her compound eyes. The cure. The humans had the cure, and they were giving it freely. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. I do not know how to repay this kindness. Hannah's expression did not change. There is no payment required. This is a gift, as so many things we gave were gifts. The words carried a weight that Ara did not fully understand. She remembered stories from her elders about humans who once walked among the Velix, helping with problems large and small. She remembered the jokes that were made about them, the dismissive way they were treated. "Captain Hannah," she said carefully, "may I ask you a question?" Hannah nodded, double quotes. "Why did your people leave? I have read the official records, but I feel they do not tell the whole truth." For the first time, something changed in Hannah's face, a small crack in her neutral mask, showing exhaustion beneath. "We did not leave in anger," she said. "We left because we were tired." Tired of what? Tired of giving everything and receiving nothing? Tired of being needed, but never respected? Tired of sitting at tables where our voices were ignored? Tired of solving problems for people who saw us as servants instead of partners? Hannah paused, choosing her next words carefully. "We did not want revenge. We simply wanted to stop hurting." Ara thought about this. She thought about her own leaders, the way they had spoken about humans, the casual cruelty they had shown. She had been young during the withdrawal, too young to understand. Now she was beginning to see. "I am sorry," she said. "On behalf of my people, I am sorry." Hannah looked at her for a long moment. "You were young, Captain. You did not make the choices that led to this moment. But you will inherit their consequences, just as we inherited the consequences of our own elders' hopes." "What happens now?" Ara asked. "Will you ever return to the council?" "No." The word was gentle, but final. "We will trade with you. We will share knowledge when lives are at stake. We will not close our borders to those in genuine need. We'll never again sit at a table where we are treated as less than we are." That part of our history is over. It's the seeker of truth departed with the cure. Within weeks, the plague was contained. Within months, it was eradicated completely. Millions of Velix lives were saved by human medicine. The High Speaker recovered from his illness. He called a council session to discuss what had happened. For the first time in recorded memory, he had no jokes to make about humans. He had no clever words about their inferiority. He sat in his chair and looked at the empty human table and said nothing at all. Counselor Jin of the Druin rose to speak. He had grown older in the past 5 years, his scales darker, his voice stronger, had become a leader among his people, advocating for change, pushing for reform. "We must acknowledge our failures," he said. "We must admit that we were wrong. The humans did not abandon us. We pushed them away. We used them and mocked them and denied them the respect they deserved. They owed us nothing, and yet they gave us everything. Now they owe us even less, and we are surprised that they will not give more." The chamber was silent. No one argued with him. The disasters of the past 5 years had taught even the proudest species a lesson in humility. "The question now," Jin continued, "is not how to bring the humans back. They have made their choice, and we must respect it. The question is how to become worthy of their respect, how to build something new, something better, something that earns the trust we lost." Outside the station, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere among them, on a small blue world, orbiting a yellow sun, humans looked up at the same sky and wondered if the galaxy would ever truly change. 10 years after the humans left, the Galactic Council finally fell apart. It did not end with a dramatic vote or a formal announcement. It simply stopped working. The Velix Collective and the Druin Empire, without neutral mediators to help them resolve their differences, fought a war that lasted 18 months. It was not a large war by historical standards, but it was enough. 3 border worlds were destroyed. Millions died. Both sides claimed victory, but everyone knew the truth. There were no winners. The Morai retreated into isolation. They closed their borders and stopped attending council sessions. Their ancient archives, despite Wu's best efforts, continued to deteriorate. They decided that preserving what remained was more important than participating in a broken system. The station Eternal Accord, once the shining symbol of galactic cooperation, became a ruin. Its systems failed one by one. Its halls grew dark and cold. The great chamber where species had gathered for 400 years stood empty, dust gathering on the tables. Silence filling the space where arguments and laughter had once lived. But from the ashes of the old order, something new was beginning to grow. Counselor Jin, now leader of a reformed faction within the Druin Empire, refused to accept that this was the end. He had spent 10 years studying human culture, learning their history, understanding what they valued. He knew that humans respected action more than words. Apologies meant nothing without change, so he changed things within his own empire. He pushed for reforms that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. He demanded that scientists receive the same honor as warriors. He created schools where young Druin learned to solve problems instead of just fighting them. He built bridges to the Vilix Collective, negotiating peace agreements personally, without mediators, learning from his own mistakes. Slowly, others began to follow his example. Vilix speaker, Ara, who had once commanded the Seeker of Truth, rose through the ranks of her government. She brought with her the lessons she had learned from Captain Hannah. She taught her people that taking from others without gratitude was not strength. It was theft. She pushed for a new relationship with humanity, one based on genuine respect rather than desperate need. Mehar Elder Wu emerged from isolation with a proposal. The three species would form a new assembly, smaller than the old council, focused on cooperation rather than dominance. There would be no single leader, no hierarchy of importance. Every voice would carry equal weight. They called it the Circle of Equals. It met for the first time on a neutral station. Far from the ruins of eternal accord, Jin stood before the assembled delegates and spoke. The words he had been preparing for years. We are here because we failed. We failed ourselves, and we failed the humans who once trusted us. We cannot undo what we did. We cannot bring back the lives that were lost or heal the wounds we caused. But we can choose a different path forward. We can become the partners they deserved, even if they never returned to see it. The assembly voted unanimously to send a delegation to Earth, not to beg for help, not to demand anything, but simply to apologize. Jin, Ara, and Wu traveled together. Their ship was small and unarmed. They entered human space and were immediately detected by defense platforms. But this time, something was different. The platforms did not challenge them. They received a single message. Proceed to the following coordinates. You are expected. The coordinates led them to Earth itself. They descended through clouds and saw blue oceans, green continents, cities that sparkled like jewels on the surface. The planet was beautiful, more beautiful than any of them had imagined. They understood finally why humans had fought so hard to protect it, why they had explored the stars with such hope, why they had given so much to the galaxy. They landed on a wide stone platform overlooking a great garden. Flowers of every color bloomed around them, filling the air with perfume. Birds sang in the trees. The sun was warm and golden. Ambassador Yuna was waiting for them. She was old now, her hair white, her face deeply lined. She leaned on a cane and walked slowly. But her eyes were the same eyes that had looked at the council 10 years ago. Clear, steady, unbroken. Jin stepped forward and lowered himself to his knees. In Druin culture, this was the deepest sign of respect, reserved only for those who had earned true honor. Era and Wu followed, each showing submission in the way of their own people. Ambassador Yuna, Jin said, his voice thick with emotion. We come to you not as leaders or representatives, but as individuals who are deeply ashamed of what our peoples did. We used humanity for generations. We took your gifts and offered nothing in return. We ignored your requests for equality. We mocked your pain. There is no excuse for our behavior. We can only say that we are sorry and that we are trying to be better. Yuna listened in silence. When Jin finished speaking, she did not respond immediately. She looked at each of them in turn, studying their faces, weighing their words. Stand up, she finally said. Her voice was soft but firm. You do not kneel to me. I am not your master. I never was. They rose, uncertain. I have watched your efforts from afar, Yuna continued. I have seen your reforms, your peace agreements, your circle of equals. I have seen you struggle and fail and try again. This is what we hoped for when we left. Not that you would collapse, but that you would learn to stand on your own. Will you return to us? Ara asked, unable to hold back the question. Yuna shook her head. No, that chapter of our history is closed, but a new chapter can begin, if you are willing. She gestured, and a young man approached from the garden. He was tall and strong, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence. He bowed to the delegates in the human way. "This is Day," Una said, "my grandson. He will serve as an observer in your circle of equals. He will not lead. He will not solve your problems. He will simply be present, watching, learning, reporting back to us what he sees." Jin felt his heart quicken. It was not what they had hoped for, but it was something. "A beginning, You're honored," he said. Day stepped forward. In his hand, he carried a small object that caught the sunlight. It was the data crystal that Una had left on the council table 10 years ago. "My grandmother asked me to bring this," he said. "It has been updated with a new message." He handed the crystal to Jin. The Druid leader held it carefully, afraid it might break in his claws. "What does it say?" Wu asked. Day smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like his grandmother must have looked when she was young. Full of hope. "Ready to try again?" It says, "We remember why we left. Help us remember why we might stay." The sun continued to shine over the garden. Birds sang their songs. 3 species who had once ruled the galaxy with arrogance stood humbled before an elderly woman and her grandson. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang, calling the people of Earth to their daily work. The sound carried across the fields and flowers, across the mountains and seas, across the void of space to the stars beyond. It was not an ending. It was not a triumphant return. It was something smaller, but perhaps more important. It was a second chance, and this time they would try to deserve it.